So I'm very happy to be here among you and discuss with all of you the comparison between the different cases of countries that have been subject to austerity policies, to harsh austerity policies in Europe. Can I have one?
Yeah,
okay, it's
I
on.
don't have a pointer, but just press that button.
Okay.
Forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, in my presentation, to explain what are the economic and social consequences of the austerity and neoliberal adjustment in Greece, and what lessons we can draw from the Greek case. What can the Greek case show to the rest of Europe? I am going to introduce my main arguments in this presentation, just also making a brief introduction and mentioning first of all that the 2009 sovereign debt crisis marks the breakdown of the Greek socio-economic model of the period 1994-2008. This is a major structural crisis that Greece has been facing since 2008. Of course, the structural causes of sovereign debt crisis are mainly internal, but this would have not erupted in the absence of the global financial crisis and in the presence of a more solidaristic monetary union. In 2010 and 2012, Greece has received financial assistance of historical dimensions by Eurozone member states and the IMF to avoid disorderly default on sovereign debt, but the aim was to save, not to offer solidarity, to provide solidarity to Greece, but the main aim was to save the euro and the European and American banks from collapse, and at the same time to accelerate and complete the neoliberal project in Greece that had started even before the crisis. I mean, since the beginning of the 90s, as in other European EU countries, the neoliberal project was in progress. But this was, perhaps Greece was somewhat different, somewhat laggard in several respects, and this was the opportunity, through the conditionality of the loans provided to Greece, to accelerate and complete this neoliberal project. And now we are very much advanced, are more forward, more advanced than other EU countries. And this is one of the lessons that we can draw from Greece case, how austerity and the breakdown of the economic model and social model can now be an opportunity for the completion of neoliberalism. Now, this is in Greece, an international policy experiment is taking place. And this is very important to underline. This experiment is testing the following things. First of all, this policy experiment, international policy experiment, is testing that state-led depression and neoliberal structural adjustment. It can be an exit strategy from structural crisis in an over-indebted country, member of monetary union, and unable to print money or devalue currency to repay sovereign debt and redress the current account deficit. So this is the test, and the outcomes, I'm going to go afterwards and show the outcomes. Another test that is taking place is the test of the feasibility of ambitious economic policy targets, the achievement of these targets in a very tight time schedule. The scale of fiscal consolidation is equal to 21% of GDP in 4 years. And the second ambitious target is the internal devaluation of the devaluation of wages and prices of 20% in 4 years. These were the two main targets of the economic adjustment program that is being implemented in Greece. The third test was about the social and political sustainability of the project, of the neoliberal project, the structural adjustment project, the project, and the fiscal consolidation project. Of course, the social and political sustainability is dependent on the reactions of the citizens and of the society, which has been deprived of social rights, of employee rights, and the right to work has been lost for huge numbers of the working age population. And many petty entrepreneurs and many independent workers now have been pushed out of business, and there has been a great class transformation and proletarianization of the middle classes. So this is also a social and political project it's taking place, and this project is testing the feasibility, the political feasibility of and social feasibility of this economic adjustment program. Now, is it okay? Okay. Now I'm going to briefly outline the main outcomes of the program, the economic adjustment program. We are here now in a situation similar or even worse of the Great Depression in the US in the 30s. We are facing a situation of economic collapse and social catastrophe. The official employment rate is at 28%. The poverty and social exclusion rate has now passed to 35%, and there is a huge destruction of productive capacity which is taking place and is undermining the possibility for endogenous growth even after the economic program is finished. At the same time, we are facing the dismantlement of the pre-crisis wage-setting system and of the employment regime, the erosion of the social security system, and we are now also facing a humanitarian crisis that is the outcome of converging factors. First of all, unemployment and precariousness are leading many households to have very low work intensity. At the same time, the incomes have been reduced in most households, and this is it's much more a problem in very low-income households. At the same time, we have many great parts and share of the population, about 1/3 of the population, which has no access to health care. So these three combining factors are creating what we are calling in Greece a humanitarian crisis. At the same time, we are still this started in the beginning of 2010, we are still in a debt trap. And this is very important because after 3 sovereign debt restructurings, which were allowed by the creditors, the debt remains unsustainable. Even we have a growth in private household debt, which was very low before the crisis, and now it has become a great problem. The Greek example shows the patent failure of 3 recipes of economic orthodoxy. The first recipe is that austerity can be expansionary, so it's a way out of the crisis. The second recipe is that excessive sovereign debt can be repaid by primary budget surpluses. And the third recipe is that by reducing unit labor costs, we can restore competitiveness and the external balance. Now, I'm going to speak a little bit about the socio-economic model that that prevailed in Greece before the crisis, just to be able to to set the changes that have taken place since 2010 in context. The socio-economic model before the crisis was characterized by a macroeconomic regime that was characterized by high growth rates and productivity gains, a growth driven by internal demand, which was sustained by rising wages, public borrowing, and growing private borrowing, which was, as I had said before, low in European comparison. 43% was the household debt of the GDP before the crisis, which was low by European comparison. We had a great sovereign debt, a big sovereign debt ratio vis-à-vis to GDP, but we had a low household debt, increasing but low. So this macroeconomic regime has with these high growth rates, have nevertheless not been able to reduce the sovereign debt ratio to GDP ratio because of a great tax deficit that was a prevailing feature of the macroeconomic model. The production regime was characterized by the important role of public firms in strategic sectors, a strong product market regulation, high rates of self-employment and micro firms. The privatization process was relatively slow if we compare to EU average. And we had an escalating current account deficit after 1997. The European financial and industrial capital were major actors in this production regime and the macroeconomic regime because the European banks were lending massively to the Greek state, and the European capital was participating in public works, public procurement, in all the privatization programs of the Greek governments. They were multinational chains were present in the retail in Greece. So this transformation before the crisis was done by a massive involvement of active involvement of the European financial industrial capital. Now, in this graph, you can see the tax deficit that I was talking about. That was one of the factors that explain the rise of the sovereign debt before the crisis. You know very well the tax exemptions and to the big capital. You know also you have most probably read about the tax evasion also by petty entrepreneurs or independent professionals, etc. So this tax deficit is the main responsible for keeping together with the expenditure on the Athens Olympics, together with high military spending, they are responsible for the high sovereign debt to GDP ratio, in spite of the high growth rates before the crisis. Now, okay, I can go very quickly through the socioeconomic, the employment regime before the crisis. I can describe it very briefly by saying that as regards the employment regime, there was relatively limited flexibility in the formal employment relations, a predominance of informal forms of flexibility that were spread mostly among youth and migrants, a pronounced labor market segmentation, the good coverage by collective agreements and collective bargaining, and there were real wage increases almost in line with productivity. This was the employment regime. Now we can turn to the welfare regime. We had a fragmented pay-as-you-go pension system with a diminishing ratio of insured to pensioners and extensive and long-standing evasion of contributions. In the healthcare sector, we had a national health system, but in spite of this, we had great disparities in the levels of cover and access to healthcare between different groups of population, and a large share of private health expenditure, almost the highest in the EU. And as regards defamiliarization, there has been a process of defamiliarization, but still, before the crisis, Greece had the lowest coverage of children and elderly by care services in the former EU 15. Now, the aims and targets of the economic adjustment program were very ambitious, as I said in the beginning. What is particular about the Greek case, it's the huge scale of adjustment. It's not the type of adjustment, because the type of adjustment is the same everywhere, almost everywhere. But the scale of adjustment. The scale of fiscal consolidation, as I said, is 21.5% of the GDP in 4 years. This is it's a historical dimension of fiscal consolidation in Europe, at least after the Second World War. There is no other country that has been asked to engage in such type of fiscal consolidation. There is no country that is asked to pay an excessive debt by primary budget surpluses. This is another historical fact. This theory about internal devaluation, that through internal devaluation of wages we will produce falling prices, is engaging in a very dangerous economic goal of producing deflation in order to balance the external payments deficit. So this is it's also original, because never before an internal devaluation recipe has been of this magnitude has been proposed to any state that has undergone the economic adjustment programs of the IMF or any other country following this kind of structural adjustment. So 20% devaluation of wages that would produce 20% fall in prices. This means deflation of 20% is never been proposed as an economic recipe to any kind of country after the experience of the Great Depression in the 30s that brought about the deleterious effects of deflation in the economic literature. So I mean, even if this internal devaluation was successful, which is not, because the wage reductions have not been translated into price reductions. But if they were translated, because now we have in 2013 we had deflation of 1.5%. Even if this strategy was successful, you can imagine what would be the impact to the economy of falling wages by 20%, falling prices of 20%. So the whole economic activity would be disturbed. We would be in front, perhaps, of an economic collapse. Okay, so one of the main targets of the economic adjustment program is to transform the growth model from consumption-led, internal consumption-led, to export-led. And also to change completely the social model, which is considered as a cost for a profit-led growth. So the welfare state has to be reduced because it's a cost, a burden for growth. Excuse me. I'm going now through the summary, a brief summary of changes that have taken place. I start from the public sector, which was in the eye of the storm of the fiscal consolidation program. We have had nominal cuts in wages of 25 to 35%, a reduction in employment which is now of 35% in the public sector. I have not the figures on the screen, but I have checked. We have 35% reduction of public sector employment. Drastic nominal cuts in pension benefits and radical reforms in pensions. In main pensions, we have passed from a pay-as-you-go system, one-pillar system, to a basic means tested and earnings-related system, two-pillar system, one pillar to two pillars. In supplementary pensions, we have passed from a defined benefits to a notional defined contribution system. We have had severe budgetary cuts in health and education, of a size of 30% cuts, and in recent years we have more cuts, and they have been announced for 2014 and for 2015. And many great reforms that have aimed to restructure the whole public hospital sector, the primary health care, and also all levels of education. We have been facing, and we are still facing, closures and mergers everywhere that entail loss of access to health by several parts of the population. The aim was to reduce public spending, to increase private funding, and make room for further development of private providers. This means that a big privatization of funding and provision is taking place, and we are going to see the whole evolution of this trend in the following years. Because private providers are now waiting to see how much the state will reduce the coverage of the population in order to step in and control the market in education and health. So now the population is impoverished, so access to private health and private education is not possible in mass scale. But once the crisis is after, the whole restructuring of the sector, of these two sectors, education and health, is going to take the final shape. So now I'm going to the very important changes that have been introduced in the wage setting system and employment regime. We have faced in Greece during the last years the process of deregulation of the wage setting system, progressive, gradual deregulation. We have had a nominal reduction of the minimum wage by 22%, 32% for youth. The complete reform of the collective bargaining system that is leading to a decentralization and the weakening of collective bargaining. The coverage of collective bargaining of collective agreements has been severely reduced, and we are now heading towards the individualization of wage bargaining. This systematic dismantling of the wage setting system has been instrumental for bringing about an internal devaluation, which is a wage devaluation, and meeting the target of 20% reduction of unit labor costs, which has been accomplished. We have had a reduction of 20% deduction of unit labor costs in 3 years. So this would not be able if we had not dismantled the collective bargaining system, and if we had not lowered by 22% the national minimum wage, which is now not decided by partners, by social partners, but it is decided by the government. So we have had also this great change. As regards the employment regulation and working condition, the regulation of working conditions, there have been great radical reforms in the protection of dismissals, by dismissal, the employment protection. So we have liberalized individual and collective dismissals, and we have thus destroyed the pre-crisis employment regime, which was based on the permanence of employment through the protection of employees from dismissals. A host of taxation measures have been taken during the last years that are all converge in imposing an immense tax squeeze on lower and middle classes, while the high incomes and property owners continue to be the prime beneficiaries of tax evasion. and at the same time, a huge privatization program accompanies this economic adjustment program. All public assets are on sale. If this privatization is accomplished, it's advancing at a slow pace because of some legal problems. But this is very important for lenders because if they are not repaid, they want to have access to all state assets and enterprises, which are very important in their planning of how things should be turned into their advantage. So foreign lenders are waiting for taking over state enterprises and the state assets. Now I'm turning to the economic effects of the crisis, just to give you the scale of effects. We have prepared this table in which you can see this fall in GDP. I'm going to speak about cumulative change between 2009 and 2013. Domestic demand has fallen by 31.3%. You cannot see it on the table, but I can tell you what has been going on. Between 2009 and 2013, we have a fall of 31% in domestic demand, 21% of fall in GDP, 21% fall, fall in employment of 19%, fall in investment in gross fixed capital formation by 47% between 2009 and 2013. If we count from the beginning of the crisis, we have a fall of 60% of investment, cumulative fall. Labor productivity has fallen by 2.4%. Imports have fallen by 30%, and exports have only grown by 5.5%. At the same time, we have a collapse in domestic demand and a credit crunch. So this collapse in domestic demand and the credit crunch leading thousands of firms and professionals to bankruptcy. They are going pushed out of business, the independent workers and professionals. And many big industrial firms are also closing down or relocate. They are leaving the country. This, of course, these effects, if we take these effects in the longer term, as I said in the beginning, this is a great decimation of the productive structure in Greece, which does not allow for endogenous growth unless huge external investment comes into the country, which is going to buy out every kind of important state asset or state enterprise, and they are going to save Greece and the Greek people by investing. So there is a total dependency on external investment and external funding for growth, for potential growth, once the economic adjustment program is over. Now, if we turn to the debt trap, the outcomes of the debt trap are the following. The sovereign debt has passed from 130% of the GDP in 2009 to 176% of the GDP in 2013. As I said, this is unsustainable. Everybody knows it. The private debt of households has passed from 59% to 113% of GDP. It is greater than in Latvia in the beginning of the crisis, of the collapse of Latvia. The financial health of the banking system is systematically undermined by this recession. Now we have 27.5% of mortgage loans and 42% of consumption loans that are non-performing loans. A great problem is, as I said, that is undermining the financial stability of the banking system, which needs more funds. We have had already a recapitalization of the system with the loans that we have got, and now because of these non-performing loans, the stress tests have proven that we need more money to ensure the financial stability of the banking system. So, recession is undermining everything. Social effects of the crisis. I'm turning to the social effects of the crisis. As I said, employment fell by 19% in 4 years. The unemployment rate has passed from 9.5 to 27% on an annual basis, 2013. Now, unemployment rate is at 28% in November 2013. Nominal wages have fallen. Nominal wages have fallen by 16%. Real wages have fallen by 26%. The monthly household expenditure has dropped by 27% in real terms. 27% in real terms. And reduced wage floors, minimum wage, and wage arrears make reproduction of employees very precarious. There has been also an increase in part-time work and uninsured work that also contribute to this precariousness. Okay. More social effects now. We have had a drastic retrenchment in social expenditure over 2009 and 2014. Social transfers in kind have been reduced by 81%. Other social benefits have been reduced by 20%. Public expenditure on health care has been reduced by 32%. As I said in the beginning, the deficient health insurance is leading to humanitarian crisis. 28% of the population is not insured anymore. And access to quality health care has been impaired. Increased inequality is also the outcome of the economic adjustment program. And we have now reached alarming levels of poverty and social exclusion. Material deprivation is also very widespread. Many parts of the population have no access to food, to sufficient food, electricity, heating, shelter, and healthcare, as I said. I'm finishing, so. A very, very important impact of the crisis is on the social security system. We are heading towards residual social protection because the social security system is undermined by the recession, by mass unemployment, the dramatic fall in wages, and the expansion of informal work. And there are short-term problems created by this erosion of the social security system. As I say, the ruined self-employment and petty entrepreneurs are unable to pay contributions. 49% of the total are unable to pay their social security contributions. The long-term unemployed have no health insurance. But we can also see the medium and longer-term problems coming. The fall in revenues from contributions undermines sustainability of the social security system and makes downward adjustments of benefits necessary. We have had several rounds of downward adjustment of social benefits. We are heading, as I said, to residual benefits for those who have not sufficiently contributed, because mass unemployment does not allow people for long periods of their life to contribute. My final comments. I come to the final comments. First of all, adjustment through depression has not only a great cost, but is also an extremely dangerous experiment from the economic point of view. As I told you, there is a deflation in 2013. and we are expecting deflation, also a fall in prices in 2014 and 2015 if these policies maintained, state policies. We will even after the austerity is finished, we will need about 20 years to absorb unemployment of 30 to 35%, as we are heading towards this kind of the rates of unemployment, 30% and 35%, according to the way of measuring unemployment. But in 2014-15, we are expecting a rise in unemployment up to 30%, official figures. We have the uncontrolled destruction of competitive firms, and because we have competitive firms that are now being closed down, not only the ones that were not doing well before the crisis, competitive firms. The destruction of competitive firms is dramatically weakening the internal endogenous capacity of economic revival. The labor cost is not the main cause behind the deterioration of external deficit between 2001 2008. So the reduction in productive capacity and investment is not helping Greece to face the problems of structural competitiveness, which was the main problem behind the external deficit before the crisis. So we have fall in productivity, and no investment is accumulating the problem of structural competitiveness. Expansionary austerity is a failed recipe of economic orthodoxy as a way out of the crisis, especially when implemented in a coordinated way in the EU. The big stakes in the next 2 years are the privatization of public companies, agencies, and real estate. There is a very large interest by foreign multinationals. The foreclosures of private real estate are also ahead. Because they are now starting since the beginning of 2014, after the liberalization of foreclosures. Before we had protection, we had laws protecting people from foreclosures of private real estate. This liberalization is a precondition for a collapse in real estate prices and the buyout of land and houses and buildings by big real estate companies at discount prices. The last stage of internal devaluation is thus the seizure of property from low-income owners and the concentration of private property in the hands of big companies. What could be an alternative? Stop austerity now, to write off a substantial part of the sovereign debt, to relaunch growth in order to exit the debt trap, to engage into a smoother fiscal adjustment and repayment of the remaining debt with part of the dividend of growth. The new haircut on the debt held by the official sector is refused by the German government, which is preparing new loans and a new austerity program after spring 2014. The Greek case, we would say it's an exemplary for the whole EU. I think the scale is very huge in Greece, but the same recipe is put forward by European institutions under the European semesters and the Europact, Europlus Pact. And in my view, it's not only Greece that is being pushed towards this economic and social collapse. It is the whole European social model that is threatened. So we need international solidarity and European solidarity for putting forward a new alternative way of facing the crisis and prepare a new growth model in Europe which respects social rights and social progress. Thank you.